Welcome to Psychic Girls Next Door. We are your hosts, Lily Hibarino
and Shannon Miller. This podcast is for all spirituality enthusiasts and psychics next door to share tools, experiences, and psychic practices that align with your highest vibrational self.
So on this episode, we will be debunking common myths and misconceptions about psychics. So this is a topic that came up this week with a client of mine. She was just mentioning that she thought that psychics were a fraud, and I guess she also came from a family that was very conservative, so they had their own opinions about psychics. And then when she's actually open up to receive a psychic or energy reading, and then she met me and some other readers, she was like, oh my gosh, they're just normal people.
Yeah.
And I thought it was just so funny. And we started talking about it, and then she's actually suggested that we talk about it, because I'm sure there's a lot of skeptics out there. And there are people that just don't know. Maybe they don't know a psychic. Maybe there might be a psychic in their lives, but they just don't know about it. So I thought it would be interesting to talk about our own experiences in this community, because we do get a lot of...
it's like a mixed bag of reviews.
Yeah, like some people, they're total believers, and some people like completely like they don't believe it at all. Because I know you have like a fun story to share.
Oh, yeah.
We'll talk about myth number 1, and I think is one of the biggest myths, which is that psychics are scammers, con artists, or frauds.
Oh, yeah. And I do have I think I have stories that can support both. I'll start with my this is post me doing the spirituality program we did. And I was in New York, and this is September 2019. And I was at this place in Brooklyn, and it was my first time in New York. And I feel like whenever you're in New York, they always say the figment of they always say the general they that you will get scammed in some way, or New York kind of bites you in the rear end in some way, whatever that means. And so I had never heard of that, but I did experience that with this psychic who I found. And for me,
how did you find the psychic? I'm curious.
Well, we were at this craft fair kind of thing. It was in this open warehouse type of, it was a smaller warehouse space, but it was different merchants and makers, and then there was a booth with this woman who does readings, and I'm of course I'm gonna attract that person to be follow me into my tent. And we it was very kind of when you get swindled and just kind of be oh yeah, this is exactly what I need. And most of the time I'm down for a reading from anyone, if they can. I think that's where my discernment after this whole experience, I definitely became more discerning with who I'm going to give my money to. And I realized so she enticed me with a reading, and then Megan and her friend Cheryl, they went off to look at the other jewelry booths or wherever there's a bag creator, and there's a bunch of them. So but I was yeah, I'll do a reading. And it turned out to be one of those situations where, I see this in your space. She told me that I had a dark entity attached to my soul. And I've had this dark entity attached to my soul. He came in when I was born and attached to my spirit. And in order for me to get rid of him, I had to pay her hundreds of dollars for candles and ceremonies and different rituals that she was going to do without my knowledge. She would do it on the back end in her own leisure, right? And so I had a good reading with her, and she did. I know that she had abilities because I can pick up on stuff, and she made a comment to me about how and what convinced me to give her more money. I'm laughing at myself. It was kind of
embarrassing. Did she just looked at you
she picked me out, Megan,
and just gave you a reading? Did she use tarot cards? Well, how was her setting?
she didn't give me tarot cards. It was more about
just sitting in front of you.
Sitting in front of me, like looking at my energy. And like, I can't remember. It's like I cleaned this out for, got it out of my space from a long time ago, but she picked up on how, because I think I'm always trying to manifest love. I think like that can make me vulnerable to these types of people too. And I definitely was in that moment. And so I was like, I want to clean out my heart chakra and manifest a romantic partner, like, and that's what I gave her. And so she was looking at my energy, and then she was saying how she saw that experience of like this, guide who came in, and there's this dark energy. And she said that, yeah, like, have you ever had men leave you after like love them and leave them, like that kind of dynamic of like, if they were hanging out with you and like hooking up with you, like, have you ever had men just dramatically need to leave? And that has happened twice to me. And I was like, wait, what? Like, one is like, a past person who I was like kind of hanging out with, and he was in town, and then he was staying with his friends, and he had the spare key, and the friend lost the keys, so he had to like go. And then that was like one situation. And then the other situation was like, it wasn't a good fit, it wasn't a good vibe. Like I was like, well, this isn't going anywhere. And so it was like, fine. It didn't feel like dramatic at the time, but the one situation with the guy who I actually liked, that was like, what do you mean? Like, you have to leave. And I was very like upset about it. And so when she picked up on that energy, I was like, wait, this actually has happened to me. But the way she said it was not how I had, exactly experienced it at the time. But then I was like, oh, this makes a lot of sense. Like, and so I think like that made me realize like sometimes I validate information that people are reading off of me just to kind of create some new narrative. In a way, like, it just like was like, oh, this narrative potentially fits, like, this makes sense, like, sure. And then so in order for her to like look at why that they like love me and leave me or whatever, I like had to pay her more money to like,
of course,
see what was the cause of that. And so
if you want to learn more,
oh yeah, I spent $300. I will just,
what?
yeah. And like, sometimes I'm like, I spent $300, and then I went to like the part 2 was going to her office location, and like, I think it was near like Little Italy in, downtown Manhattan. And I was like, okay, like, so I had to go to her office for like part 2 of the reading, and she wanted more money. And I was like, nope, I have paid you all that I can pay you. Like,
wow.
And I feel embarrassed that I spent $300, but if that was a lesson I needed to learn to not do that, I learned it.
Wow. My
to not
God.
do that again.
Wow. We learn the hard way sometimes.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And it's like, sometimes I'm like, oh, maybe there is a kernel of truth where something, that is just like a man repellent got put in my space, or a guide, or got attached to me. But then I was like, I truly don't feel that way. Like, I don't feel like when I separate myself from the situation, I feel like it's kind of like one of those like scam people. They do this on Instagram too. I have fallen prey to like 2 scam readings on Instagram, but they were like $25. And then I'm like, this is not real. Like, this is
what happened.
People just reach out to you and be like, hey, I love your energy. Like, can I give you a reading? And then I think at the time I was like looking out, I was like calling that situation in. But it was an authentic reader. It was like people trying to get my money off the internet. And
yeah. Well, one of the things I'm going to say is that if someone reaches out to you offering readings, that's a red flag.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say, as a psychic, a professional psychic, I would never reach out to anyone.
No.
Say, oh, I see this in your energy space, and offering readings. You will never receive a message from me like that. And if you do, please report it, because it's a fake profile.
Oh yeah.
If that happens on social media.
Yeah. no, absolutely. So yeah,
But did you have the readings?
it gave me, it was just like, oh, it was said the same thing. You have a dark entity.
But if you want to learn more,
if you want, like,
you have to pay an extra $100.
Right. And I'm like, okay, this is like, I don't need to be scammed anymore.
Wow. Well, it's just unfortunate that people like that just give psychics a bad reputation.
Oh, yeah, they do.
And I think this is like in every industry, right?
Yeah.
It's like some, I want to say the bad apples
people,
that, people have a bad experience and then they think all psychics or mediums are like that, which is farther from the truth. I think that those people, they're out there to scam or prey on vulnerable people.
Oh, yeah.
There's actually far in between, to be quite honest, because I have met so many talented psychics and mediums they're very legitimate about their psychic abilities and gifts that, they give you very genuine information than actually meeting scammers.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, I feel like I've met a lot of scammers in my life in several ways.
Not only psychics.
Not only psychic scammers, just like flim flam people who like to like kind of skirt around. What is it, like the dark residue of society? They dabble in the dark arts, not in a good way and not in a fun way, but I don't know. I feel like maybe it's like me, I don't know, like where I give off this energy of I'm open to anyone. And now I'm not open to anyone. That narrative has shifted. That old trending.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah. Well, you have to be discerning about people like that. And that's kind of the people that end up on the news, and then people just make these assumptions about psychics. But I think if things about these misconceptions about psychics and mediums, it goes further down history, where I would say a lot because of conservative religious purposes of, surrounding people that were intuitives and psychics, and they were just oppressed or chastised or burned at stake.
Oh, yeah.
In history, and therefore they were labeled as crazy, a fraud, or they're a liar. And a lot of those people are put on trial, and so on and so forth. So that's why we're here today, to show you that, and we are the psychic girls next door. Just telling you that, we do take a lot of pride in,
being ethical,
working with integrity, and really using our psychic abilities to serve people for the highest good, because I feel so fulfilled when I am able to facilitate healing for people. And people say, wow, the information that you gave me really provided me with a different perspective, or I was able to shift things in my life and make changes in my life. And that, for me, that's so rewarding.
Yeah. I completely agree with that. I think when you're able to authentically serve other people through the power of facilitating a reading and a healing, there's always a healing for yourself in that situation. It's an exchange of information, and it's more, not to be positively skewed, but it's for the sake of like cleaning out something that no longer serves someone or yourself. And I think when you go in with the intention of doing that, you're going to either attract readers or psychics who also value that. It's kind of like this, shared values with friends, with family. Like, you're going to attract people who bring that in. And I think, honestly, when I was attracting a lot of scam artists, like in different ways, I wasn't really, I wasn't sure of what I wanted. I was like, it's almost like being too open to all types of options and possibilities. And sometimes like being open is great, but then it's like you can't be super open where you do not practice any discernment.
Yes, you kind of have to use your intuition too in those situations.
Yeah.
Especially when people like are promising
Oh yeah.
things
No.
like, oh, I will remove this for you,
Like,
or
really? You don't have power like that. Like that's like
wouldn't this be fun?
right. I'm like, I would love that.
I mean,
like,
trust me, I would be charging thousands of
Oh,
dollars
totally.
if that was my gift.
Oh, yeah.
You tell me how to learn that. I will sign up for that.
yeah, but it's interesting. Have you ever been swindled by psychic or anyone?
Yes, I have, but not as far as psychic work.
Yeah.
But I have been scammed in the past. When you order something
Oh, yeah.
online and it's it's nothing like you order, or they never ship it to you and things like that. But fortunately, I haven't had the experience of being in the presence of someone that was just trying to scam me. In the psychic community. So that's a myth. So
Yeah.
just to put it out there. So, and then myth number 2 that I find it very interesting is this misconception about the psychics can read minds.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Whenever I like share that I can read energy, like with anyone, and that's mainly what I see. Oh, I read the energy of it. Like, because it's the best way to kind of be as specific, but also without having to go into the details of like, because if people are like, oh, what does that mean? Then you can go into like the details. But like if people are like, oh yeah, well, I'm kind of psychic, people associate like, oh, you read minds, you know everything about me, like, and then people kind of freak out, and like either they're like they want to be around you or they don't want to be around you, and it can kind of put fear of like privacy or like fear of you knowing all of their stuff, putting them on blast or judging them or shaming them in some way. Whenever I get like people who find out like that I can do this, like if I can sense that they're not open, that's usually what comes with that. Like they're not open because they're either doing things that have been shameful to them, or they've experienced shame from their behaviors or habits, or they've, either just been very skeptical about people who can, fully see them and fully know them.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I don't know where this comes from, that we can read minds, maybe from movies and just kind of like how they exaggerate.
Right.
Like this, I don't know, this telepathy, or this narrative around like you say like you see wizards and magicians and things like that in the movies, and things that are more like ethereal. I don't think anyone can read minds.
No,
absolutely no one. And psychics, certainly we cannot. I mean, wouldn't this be?
I wouldn't want. I don't know if I'd want to.
I would never want to have this ability because I don't want to know.
Yeah.
I think I'm good with my own thoughts, and they already overwhelm me at times.
Oh, totally.
Imagine like every time like you have an interaction with someone, and then you kind of like are able to like tap into like every single thing.
Oh, yeah.
It would just like it just doesn't sound fun at all.
Yeah.
And second of all, because people think that we look at people and that we already know everything about their lives, and this is like far from the truth.
Not
because one, as psychics, we always ask for permission to read someone's energy. Of course, like when I meet someone, I can kind of, you kind of see the energy. You kind of like, overall, you kind of tap into it. But I'm not going to say anything because it's none of my business. But if you come to me for a session, then of course, we do ask permission to read the energy, but we read the energy. Mm-hmm. We're not going to go into your subconscious and details of your mind to like spill the beans, because that's not what we do. You know, our job is just to kind of look at the energy that is not serving you, as Shannon mentioned, that is not in present time. And so we can help you. For you to also access your own information and have more clarity about things in your life. But I find it's a very interesting myth.
It is an interesting myth. And maybe it comes like, I just thought of like when, True Blood, the TV show, and like
with the vampires.
Yes. The main character Sookie Stackhouse. I love the book series by Charlene Harris. It's just really entertaining. I read it when Twilight. I'm a big YA fan, so I read that series, and the main character is a telepath. So, but she also comes from like a lineage of fairies. So like that's how she's able to like read minds, because she's like, I don't know, an 18th fairy or something, like deep in her bloodline. She's like from a fairy lineage.
But again, that's like fiction.
It's fiction. Yeah. Yeah. And it's, but I mean, this is me being kind of conspiratorial, but I'm like, where did all this information come from? Even if it is fictional, like there could have been a kernel of the truth. And I think some psychics are really good at picking up on the information, and it's almost like it's leaking out of people's chakras and pockets of their energy field. And I do feel like maybe that's why people think that people can read minds. It's more, but it's not exactly reading your mind.
Yeah, but we kind of have to piece it together.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's because we get bits of information from our different psychic abilities through sense, feelings. Maybe there's words, we hear things, we see things. So it's like we start to put together like a little puzzle, and therefore then we kind of relate information to the person that we're reading. So, and of course it all kind of makes sense, but it would, this would be such an overwhelming and
I'm glad that
scary
I'm
gift.
Glad I don't have that ability.
So am I.
Yeah. I don't want to know. Most of the time I want to mind my own business.
No, yeah. So I'm good. I'm good with the psychic abilities that I have at this moment.
Yeah.
But I think that people like to make it something that is very sensational, they can do this. And maybe, who knows, back in the days when they were judging and ostracizing people with psychic abilities, that might have been one of the lies or myths that kind of might have maybe came up.
Maybe.
To kind of really... it's like this fear mongering narrative.
Yeah.
Well, this is what they do. Oh, be careful.
Yeah.
So maybe that kind of something that was embedded.
I mean, people don't like when you know more about them than they do themselves. Like, people are very resistant to either being called out or for their own stuff that they haven't been facing. It's kind of like whenever I see a psychic, I'm looking forward to them holding up a mirror to give me the information that I have not been looking at for myself. And
some people are not ready for that.
No, people don't want to get that slap to the face, harsh reality check about
kick in the butt.
Yeah, the kick in the pants that they need about, like, this is no longer serving you. Like, the situation you're in is no longer serving you, whether it's an engagement, whether it's like, a friendship, a job situation, what living environment, whatever it is. Like, when you are so comfortable with whatever circumstances you're in, and even if there's things that you're like, oh, I gotta just deal with it, or like, oh, they're not gonna change, but you know what can change? Yourself.
Always. You
can change yourself. You can change your perspective. You can change, like, why are you staying in a bad situation? Or like, and maybe bad is like the wrong word to say, but why are you staying in a situation that's no longer serving you? Those are the things that people need to look at. And that's the information that a psychic can provide you. But it's more about like when you are meeting a psychic and getting a reading or a healing from a psychic or a session, whatever they call it, make sure that you go in with an intention to discover something about yourself. You don't always have to, but that's helped me so that I can pick up if I'm about to be scammed or not.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I always, like, when I start my sessions, I always ask, my clients to just stay open to whatever information that wants to come through. Sometimes it's not exactly what we want to hear, but it might be information that you need to hear right at that moment, so just stay open. But this is a great segue to myth number 3, is that psychics can predict the future.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
Wouldn't this be so fun?
Oh, it'd be great.
Right?
I think the concept of predicting the future is kind of a wild and out concept.
Yeah, it's, when people say that, it always like it brings me this picture of like Nostradamus.
Oh yeah,
right.
yeah.
Like, because it's like this picture of this old man with like the crystal ball, yeah, and then he like speaks like in this all metaphors that people are kind of like they associate with current events. So I think that's kind of how also people think that we can predict, you're gonna get married by this day, or you're gonna have this job, blah blah blah. And the reality of it is that we can't.
No.
There's no way to predict the future. I think the only thing that I say is that if you keep going down this path, this is the possibility of this happening.
Right. Because it's a pattern.
It's a pattern, right? But again, things can change at any time because you're presented with choices every day, and people change their minds, circumstances changes, events change. So there's a chance that might also change.
Yeah. And I think you can, of course, like factor in like astrological influences and societal influences. But in order you can't, I don't know, like there's Sylvia Brown. She like predicted the pandemic that would like went viral.
Oh, she did? I didn't know that.
Yeah, in her like prediction of the days ahead, or we can link the book, but she predicted the pandemic. And so, but it was a different variation of it. It wasn't the exact thing. And so there are psychics who I think have this ability to pick up on the trends and the patterns happening based off of like science and society and progress and innovation. Like, if this happens, then this might happen. But like a lot of her predictions didn't come true. Like, or the years were off, and
this happens,
because of free will.
Yeah. So, and again, this other myth of that psychics are 100% accurate, and that's not true.
No,
that's a myth because there's no way to be 100% accurate. We can maybe get as close as we can, but again, things are always evolving, changing. So there's no way,
Yeah.
And it's funny too. I don't know if you heard about this conspiracy where people talk about The Simpsons, like how their episodes, they've already predicted that in past episodes. And,
like 9/11. There's another one about 9/11.
Like different
Looney Tunes.
Yeah, like world events and political events that they have predicted, like in somehow, some way. But I don't think there's psychics that are predicting that type of stuff. I think, and again, just kind of piggybacking on what you say, it's all based a lot on historical events and just watching the patterns and the trends. And therefore it's like, ta-da, there you go.
Yeah.
This is what happens.
And I'm always curious, like, did it happen because they wrote it in? Like the cosmic narrative?
So the energy was there.
Culminated and it happened? Or, like, are they picking up on information that is not as apparent and evident to, like, it's almost like what you pay attention to will manifest either a narrative, a pattern, a belief, whatever, which can potentially manifest into existence in this like realm. But I think because of all the variables involved, it's too hard to predict the future. And it's, being as specific and, I think that concept is really almost limited in a way.
Yeah. Well, and we also, and sometimes, there are occasions where we're kind of like, we tap into maybe future things. But I'm always careful the way I word it, because you don't want to program people.
No.
Like, say, because I had someone that was mentioning to me that they had like this reading with a psychic like years ago, and she said, you're never going to get married. You're never going to find a man. And that becomes
your narrative,
a narrative, and plants the seed. Oh my gosh.
Fears,
Yes. Yeah. and believe, and then you're never gonna find a man. Therefore, that just kind of is gonna back up that belief that you're never gonna meet anyone. So I think you just kind of have to be careful how, as a psychic, of course, how you word things. So because I don't want to put my information in your space, as far as say, oh, you're never gonna leave this house and things like that. So you just kind of want to be careful how you receive this type of information, how you, your programmability to believe that too.
Right.
So I think there's all these different things that kind of play as you are either receiving a reading or you are a psychic giving a reading. We always have to be very mindful how we deliver the message.
Yeah, that's very true. And you can also apply that to people who aren't psychic. Just be mindful of how you deliver messages to people.
Yes.
I think that's a very good, nugget for anyone who's listening to this episode. Just be mindful of the words you say and how you say them, because they can impact somebody and influence somebody, and in a really great way, but also in a way that puts doubt in their space, or presents an idea that may not have been there before, but by putting and planting the seed, it's going to manifest into either a weed that's going to be toxic for that person, or a beautiful opportunity.
Yes.
You never know. It could go either way.
It can go either way. You can just improve someone's life, or you can just wreck it.
Oh yeah.
In many different ways.
Yeah.
I remember this, I had this gentleman once that came in, and he was telling me, and I asked him, well, what would you like me to look at? And he's like, well, I had a reading, and then they told me that I have all the spirit guys outside my windows, and I'm freaked out.
Aww.
And I was and I could tell in his voice that he was so scared. And I was and I apologized, I'm so sorry that they give you such information.
Right.
But let me look at it. And it wasn't anything like that. I'm not sure what happened with his past experience, but it put so much fear in this man's face. And he's to the point, he's I don't even go near to the window, nor I want to open that window. Because he was just scared that those beings would either come in or do something bad. So, and again, instill fear in his, energetic space. And I felt bad. I said, well, I'm glad you're here.
Yeah.
So we can kind of facilitate, just kind of move this, whatever this fear, this fear narrative that you've been kind of trending. He was trending on that too.
Oh, yeah.
So that can happen, so I think it's just really being mindful of this type of stuff. But these are interesting myths and misconceptions. So I think the biggest question for people is so how can you spot someone, a psychic or a medium, is actually legitimate?
Yeah. I mean, it's just kind of tuning into yourself, and if the information they're giving you is resonating on I am always looking for an aha moment with the information I'm getting, or something that I really needed to hear that I was not telling myself or letting myself hear from my friends or family or people in my close circle. So whenever I have those moments of connecting to the information on a deep spiritual level, that's when I'm okay, this feels accurate, this feels legit. But you have to go through that discernment process internally to be able to have that, and if that makes sense, to be able to have that moment of this makes sense, this doesn't. And sometimes information you get will, when I do tarot readings for people, I just do them for friends and family, it's just for fun, but whenever I do them for people, it's take it with a grain of salt. And sometimes the information might not be accurate right now, but it might pop up in the near future.
Yes.
So that's kind of how I discern and figure out if it's meant for me. And that's how I figured out after I paid the psychic.
Oh, and the scammers. Yes.
Yeah. I figured out after that, but I was no, I don't need to pay for
Yes.
Yeah.
I think one of the red flags is that people that promise you stuff like how to get your former lover in 10 days.
Right. Burn red candle.
Yeah, like, oh, you need to, if you want to remove this entity, you have to pay an extra $100. So these are one of the things to watch out. People, they're like either promise you things.
Yeah.
And
expect money
from it, like removing curses, spells. And I don't want to like, say that people that actually do those things in a legitimate ways, like shamans and people that work with that type of stuff. There might be legitimate for their business,
it's
but
a specialized craft.
Yeah, but they're not like charging extra. So just watch out for people that are making those like big promises. Oh, get a reading with me. I promise you get a man in 5 days.
Right. You'll find your soulmate. So do X, Y, and Z.
So just watch out for the big promises. And I think the second thing too is just, if it can come from a referral, I always prefer that way. People that already had the experience, that was recommended by a friend. And if you can go online and just read the reviews and the feedback that people have about this particular person, I think that's also a good indication whether this person speaks and work with integrity or not. So that would be one of the things, because I also, again, like, I follow my intuition too. If I don't feel like this person, I don't know, a lot of people might even say, oh, this person is a great psychic, but if I don't like resonate, I'm like, I don't know about that. That doesn't mean that
really they're good at doing that.
I don't think it's like, doesn't mean that the person is really good or bad, but it's just like, if they don't resonate with me, they just don't resonate.
Right.
So it's just kind of like following that. And I say another thing too is do your research. As I mentioned with recommendation from people that that have had readings or any psychic work, it's just Google. I think it's just like a simple tool. Go on Google, see what is being said about this person, if there's anything shady about it, so just do your research. I think before you I call it investment, because you're investing your money.
Like, your intention is to either get information or healing or both. And I think in order to do that, you want to have to understand, like, what type of information are you seeking? What type of healing are you seeking? And like for me, like, I'm Lily verified a reading that I'm going to get at, a psychic school in the area on Wednesday. So I'm super excited about that. And she also recently experienced a hypnotherapy reading that I'm going to get on the, next weekend. So it's like, when you have that verified source, it's almost like trusting that information that you're getting, and to the sense of like, or to the point of like, this, I'm open to this new experience, and whatever happens. That's kind of how I'm going into new readings, and with different psychics and different people who have these types of abilities or healing practices. But it really like comes down to like, what is the information you're seeking, and like, what is your intention with this reading? So I would kind of keep those two things in mind whenever you are researching different healers and different, because there's tons of people on TikTok out there.
Oh, there's tons of people everywhere. There's so many modalities and different practitioners. So it just depends what you're looking for. But we would love to hear if you have a story about, have you been scammed or conned? Did you have a great experience too? We would love to hear if you have any recommendations.
Yes, recommendations are always welcome. Like, verified sources, verified psychics.
Or people that you're going to give like a shout out. We would love to hear that. So feel free to send us a message, leave a comment. Also, you can interact with us on Instagram. We would love to hear back from you. But thank you so much for taking your time to be with us today. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share with your friends. Let's keep expanding this community. And we look forward to our next episode.
Thank you so much from the Psychic Girls Next Door.